Hey collectors, welcome to Star Wars Collected. I'm Jonathan. If you're new here, I hope you consider sticking around and subscribing. If you've been here before, I need you to hit that like button like a Wampa Swaps of Tauntaun. What I have for you guys today are my 5 tips for collecting, hoping it might change your perspective on how you assemble your Star Wars collection. If you've been following this channel, we've been doing a lot of unboxings recently, and while I love unboxings and showing new merchandise with you guys and getting to explore it myself, my big move here has kind of made me a little more philosophical. It made me reflect on collecting. I've always kind of been a collector one way or another, so I thought I'd put down 5 tips for collecting. Let's go ahead and start it off here with number 1. My first recommendation is to set a budget. This is really important. You don't want to be collecting and be afraid that you can't afford the things that you're buying, or that you're overextending yourself, something of that nature. It's okay to go over that every once in a while, but then you just need to compensate on the months after that. So if there's a piece that you really, really want, and it's 2 or 3 times your monthly budget, that's fine. Go ahead, you can get it, but just, you need to kind of cool it off for 2 months or so. The other thing I would tell you to do is to watch pre-orders. Pre-orders are kind of sneaky, Maybe it doesn't cost you anything to click that pre-order button. Maybe it costs you $50, $100, something like that to put that money down. But you pre-order enough Sideshow and Hot Toy pieces, and it ends up, you're buying 1 a month, you're buying 2 a month before you know it. So just make sure you're setting a budget, something that you feel comfortable with, and reflect on it every once in a while. Am I still feeling comfortable with this number? Do I have maybe a little bit more, and I could put a little bit more into it? Is this still working for me? Just be really honest with yourself. My second tip is to find a focus. I think this is really hard when you're a new collector or you're new to a certain genre of collecting. I know that my focus is 1-to-1 scale replicas and things of that nature. I love 1-to-1 helmets, things like that. I have about 100 of these guys in my collection, and I love helmets, and I love the lightsabers and all that stuff. Now that doesn't mean I don't have a collection full of other things too. And that's good and bad. Sometimes I look at people's collection and they're all 1-to-1 replicas, and I'm like, that's really cool. Like, it's really cool that all of their stuff is in the same scale and it all kind of matches. But then I think about, if I was in 1-to-1 scale only, what happens when I really love an AT-AT or an AT-ST? Like, I'm not going to get a 1-to-1 scale version of that. In something if you've been watching my videos recently, something I've been kind of debating about is 6 scale. When it comes to Sideshow and Hot Toys and things like that, they make beautiful figures, amazing figures. You basically can't beat them. And to do a 1-to-1 scale version of a Death Trooper is going to cost you a lot more than a Hot Toys is. But you can very quickly end up with a lot of these 1-to-6 scale figures, and they are not inexpensive. And you just sort of need to figure out where you want to put your money into your collection. So find a focus. What pieces in your collection do you keep coming back to? I know that when I had my former setup, I had this wall of helmets, and that is always where I went. That's always where I was, if I was working out and I wanted to take a little break in between sets, I'd walk into my collection room and I would end up staring at my wall of helmets. So I know that there's something about helmets, there's something about 1-to-1 replicas that make it feel very real for me, and that is my focus. When I was at Star Wars Celebration, I went to a great panel on the collector's stage, but I disagreed with a lot of the advice that they were giving. One of the pieces of advice that they were giving was along this line, find a focus, but they were down to a single character. There was a guy up there who loved Chewbacca. I love Chewbacca too, but like his whole collection was Chewbacca, and that's fine. That's totally fine for him. It's an awesome Chewbacca collection. I've also seen some Darth Vader collections out there. There's just nothing but Darth Vader. But I would not hand that advice out to everybody, that you need to figure out a single character and buy nothing but that single character. That for me would be kind of boring, and kind of the opposite of where a lot of people feel Star Wars should be going, which is sort of expanding out into more characters, more areas. To focus on a single one, for me, would feel very stale. And I also tend to think in terms of representation. So, I just brought this Clone Trooper helmet in, and even though I just broke this rule a couple weeks ago, I don't need a million Clone Troopers. I don't need a Clone Trooper in every single scale. If I have, a 1-to-1 scale replica of the helmet, is that the purest recommendation that I want in my collection? And for me, since my focus is on 1-to-1 scale replicas, then it is. My third recommendation would be to find a community. And the easiest way for me to do that has been through the Facebook groups. I belong to a bunch of Facebook groups. There's even a good chance that you either found this video or found me for the very first time through one of the Facebook groups that we both belong to. But there are so many of them out there, and not all of my videos apply to every single one that I belong to, so I try to, as best I can, pick and choose the ones that make sense to share this content in. But you have groups out there that are on a single, how do you display your collection? You have ones on single characters. There's the Chewbacca builder group, which I love, but there's almost a builder group for every single character out there. There's ones just around cosplay, which is just sort of all costuming in general, which are fascinating. There are ones around scale, so there are ones that are just about 1/6 scale figures, whether those are Sideshow or Hot Toys. There are ones that are just around 1-to-1 scale helmets and replicas, things of that nature. There are ones that are just about items, so there are ones that are just about Star Wars helmets. That's all they are. You don't post in there about your new hot toy or your new statue. It is about the helmet. And then the last thing would be DIY, which I have learned a ton through. So half of my collection probably is things that I have built or finished in some way. So I have learned a lot about how to 3D print or how to finish a resin mold or something of that nature. So I would highly recommend that you join a Facebook group because they're extremely educational, and you are going to find a community of people who love what you love, and that does make it feel maybe a little less lonely at times. All of us, I'm sure, can relate to maybe being the one Star Wars guy in their group of friends, their families, things of that nature. So it is nice to find other people who are just as crazy and obsessed as you are over this subject. And it just brings a nice sense of community to what you're doing. My fourth one is actually top of my mind right now, which is putting as much thought into the display of the piece as the piece itself. So I have this new space down here. I had a great gallery before that I really, really love, but this has a lot more potential, almost to the point where it's intimidating me. I'm a little bit afraid to get started on it, but you need to make sure that you are ready to accept that piece into your collection. There are a lot of people out there who buy a lot of things and leave them in boxes, and if that brings you joy and happiness, then that's fine. That's on you. I just can't imagine that that's going to do a lot sitting in a closet for you. So when you buy a piece, make sure that you have the space for it, or you can at least visualize it in your collection, how you might be able to move some things around and bring it in there. Because if it is poorly displayed, as in like everything's just jammed into one another, you're not going to enjoy it as much. It's not going to be as an impressive of a display as maybe what you want. And again, if you're just leaving it in a box, that's kind of an odd way to spend your money, in my opinion. And number 5, I think this one truly is the most important, which is why I put it last. Collect things that you love and bring you joy. My collection is a real mix of things that are, relatively pretty expensive things, down to Hasbro pieces that have been remodeled or haven't even been touched. I have an Admiral Akbar that is like a 12-inch figure from the late 90s that, I put him in my display cabinet. He looks pretty good. I have a couple Jedi that are also Hasbro that are 12-inch that, they kind of get pushed in the back of the shelf, but, with the other Jedi figures that are Sideshow and Hot Toys, they look pretty darn good. Don't worry so much about what is the newest, what is the best, what is the most expensive. If Black Series is what brings you joy, those scale figures, collect Black Series. Don't feel pressured to bring your collection to the next level and start doing Sideshow and Hot Toys versions of those. And also just don't be too obsessed with, what brand is on it. If it's something that you think looks good in your collection, it brings you joy in some way, then that's okay. That's okay to be part of your collection. Sometimes I admire some people's collections that are, all master replicas or something like that. And man, that takes a lot of discipline. It takes also a lot of money to do that. But for what purpose? If that's the aesthetic you want, that's great. But I do see some gatekeeping online of your thing is okay, but it really should be this one because this one's so much better. Forget that, guys. Like, this is supposed to be fun. If it brings you joy, you like how it looks, and it complements your collection, go for it. Collect it. Collect what you love. Alright collectors, those are my 5 tips for collecting. I probably have a million more, so if you enjoyed this video, please let me know. I would also love to maybe do a combination of your guys' tips. So hop down in the comments, let me know what your tips are for collecting, and maybe I will do a fan version of this video and share all those tips out. You know, like I said, this is Star Wars Collected. It is about the merchandise, it is about the collection and things like that, but it is also about collecting. So I'd love to have a little wealth of knowledge going on down here in the comments section. So let me know. If you guys enjoyed this video, please give me a like. If you like more videos like this, please subscribe. Make sure you're following us on Instagram. That's a place where you and I can actually interact directly with one another, which is a lot of fun. I'm also constantly putting up polls and new merchandise and things of that nature so that you guys can see it before everyone else does. So guys, enjoy it, and we'll see you later.